The high school reunion is a strange ritual. It is a museum of who we were, curated by who we have become. For most people, walking into that gymnasium is an act of comparison. We check for gray hair, we check for wedding rings, we check for career titles. It is a quiet audit of time. We go there to measure how far we have traveled from the starting line. But for a specific type of man, the archetype we recognize as Stifler, the reunion is not a museum. It is a stadium. And he believes he is still the headliner. While his peers treat the event as a retrospective, looking back at the past with a mix of fondness and relief that it's over, the Stifler archetype treats it as a sequel. He enters the room not to reconnect, but to reconquer. He wears the same energy he wore at 18, assuming that the social currency that made him a king in the cafeteria still holds value in the adult world. He doesn't realize that the market has crashed. There is a question that hangs in the air, unasked, when the class clown returns 10 years later without changing his act. At 18, being the loudest person in the room is a form of power. It signals dominance, fearlessness, and a rejection of authority. It attracts a crowd because teenagers are desperate for distraction. But what happens to that same noise at 30? When Stifler initiates the chaos, when he insults a friend as a greeting, when he sexualizes a conversation immediately, he expects the old reward: laughter, shock, admiration. But the uncomfortable question arises when the reward doesn't come. Is he still the life of the party? Or has he become the party's burden? There is a specific kind of sadness in watching someone perform a magic trick that everyone has already figured out. The audience hasn't just seen the trick before. They have outgrown the desire to be tricked. They want conversation. He only offers performance. Let's look at the mechanics of the greeting. This is where the disconnect becomes physical. Watch the moment Stifler approaches a group of old friends: Jim, Oz, Kevin. Stifler's body language is expansive, arms wide, chest out, invading personal space. He is prepared for a collision. He goes for the headlock, the aggressive high five, the physical domination that asserts, "I am still the alpha." Now watch the reaction of the others. They don't recoil in fear anymore. They don't shrink. They simply stand firm. Their posture is relaxed, grounded. They offer a hand for a handshake or a polite smile. There is a microsecond of friction here. Stifler is offering a transaction in the currency of high school dominance, physicality, and volume. The others are trying to pay in the currency of adult respect, stability, and calmness. The transaction fails. Stifler has to awkwardly adjust his energy, or worse, he doubles down, forcing the headlock on a man who is now a father, a professional, a person who no longer defines himself by his ability to endure a bully. In that small physical mismatch, we see the entire tragedy. One man is playing a contact sport while everyone else is just having a drink. Why does he do this? It is easy to label Stifler as simply obnoxious or stuck in the past. But if we strip away the stiff Meister persona, we see a defense mechanism operating at maximum capacity. Silence is terrifying for the Stifler archetype. Silence requires introspection. If the noise stops, if the laughter dies down, he might have to answer the question, who are you when you aren't the stiff Meister? For his friends, the silence of adulthood is comfortable. It's where they built their careers, their relationships, their inner lives. For Stifler, silence is a vacuum. He fills it with noise, not because he is happy, but because he is panicked. He isn't trying to annoy them. He is trying to prove he still exists. In high school, his identity was entirely external. It lived in the reactions of others. If people weren't reacting to him, he didn't matter. Now at the reunion, when the reactions are muted or polite, he feels his existence fading. He turns up the volume, becomes cruder, becomes louder, not out of arrogance, but out of an existential desperation to be seen. We see this pattern expand beyond just greetings. It infects the storytelling. Reunions are fueled by remember when on conversations. When Kevin or Oz tell a story about the past, they tell it with a sense of detachment. Can you believe we did that? We were idiots. They laugh at their younger selves. They have separated from the boy they used to be. Stifler cannot make that separation. When he tells a story, he isn't laughing at the past. He is trying to resurrect it. He tells the story of the party, the beer, the girl, expecting the same awe he received 10 years ago. He doesn't realize that for everyone else, the story is a closed chapter. For him, it is the only chapter. He is the quarterback who still wears the varsity jacket, not because it keeps him warm, but because it's the only thing that fits. He tries to pay for admiration with a story about a prank from 1999, but the cashier is looking at him with pity. The currency has expired. The bank is closed. This creates a conflict, but there is no villain here. The friends, Jim, Finch, Kevin, are not being cruel. They are simply moving at the speed of time. They have mortgages, anxieties about the future, complex relationships. They want to connect with the person Stifler is now. Stifler is not being evil. He is being loyal to the only version of himself that was ever loved. He feels betrayed. In his mind, they are the ones who changed. They became boring. They sold out. He perceives their maturity as a rejection of him. They perceive his stagnation as a tragedy. Neither side can bridge the gap. Stifler keeps throwing the ball, harder and harder, waiting for someone to catch it. But everyone else has left the field. He is throwing passes into an empty end zone, celebrating touchdowns that nobody is watching. The night winds down. The adrenaline of the entrance fades. This is the moment of internal escalation. The cracks in the armor appear. We usually see Stifler surrounded by people. But at the reunion, there comes a moment where he is alone. Maybe he's at the bar, waiting for a refill. Maybe he's looking at the dance floor where his friends are slow dancing with their wives. He isn't laughing. The smile drops. For a brief second, the stiff Meister mask slips, and we see a man who is exhausted. It takes an immense amount of energy to be a character 24 hours a day. He looks around the room and realizes that the losers he used to mock have built things. They have built lives. He has only built a reputation, and reputations are like ice sculptures. They look impressive for a moment, but they melt if you don't keep the temperature freezing. The room is getting warm. He is melting. There is a scene, perhaps hypothetical or implied, that synthesizes this entire dynamic. Stifler makes one last joke, a classic, crude, offensive Stifler joke. In 1999, this joke would have brought the house down. In the reunion, it lands in total silence. Someone coughs. Someone else checks their watch. Anyway, someone says, changing the subject. That anyway is the most brutal word in the language. It signifies that the interruption was irrelevant. Stifler wasn't booed. He wasn't kicked out. He was tolerated. And for a man whose entire identity is built on being a force of nature, being merely tolerated is a fate worse than death. The reunion ends. The lights come up in the gym. Stifler walks out. He is likely leaving alone, or with a temporary conquest that means nothing. He gets into his car. It's probably a nice car. He probably has money. But as he drives away from East Great Falls, he is driving back into a world that doesn't have a script for him anymore. The tragedy of the class clown is that the class eventually graduates. The clown is left in the empty classroom, waiting for the bell to ring, but school has been out for years. He turns up the radio. He drowns out the silence. He drives on, convinced that next time the joke will land.